Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Attachment Point. This is the roundtable edition of the Insurance Nerds Attachment Point. As usual, my co-host Brett Fulmer is with me, and we have a special guest on this wonderful Saturday morning, Deidre Wright. Deidre, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm great. How's the weather in the Bay Area?
Overcast right now, but I can't complain.
You can, if you live in California, unless there's a fire or an earthquake,
Right.
you can't complain. I don't want to hear it. So we wanted to have Deidre on. We'll go around the table. It is the roundtable edition, and
Mhm.
so the reason why I wanted to have Deidre on is because we went back and forth on a couple of emails, and I think she's got some news. She's
Mhm.
doing some really cool stuff, so we wanted to have her on and just kind of catch up and rap with her about some of the things that she's doing over at Business Insurance. So let's start off with, how is your tenure at Business Insurance?
Oh, well, things are great. Thank you, Nick and Brett, for having me on. It's great chatting with you. I admire you guys from afar, and I enjoyed our last wrap up, Nick, and talking with you about that. But things are going well. I joined again in February to let people know. And so since then, the Diversity Inclusion Institute have really been doing a lot of initiatives from having a webinar in January about recruiting for insurance careers and different career paths. We had some presentations for our members talking about productive conflict skills for that, feedback, how to give feedback in a constructive way for performance reviews, as well as the buyer's perspective. What are clients and risk managers thinking about when it comes to diversity and inclusion? So we had some things like that go on. Also, we just launched some of the results of our diversity survey,
Mhm.
which came out, which is really exciting. So
How did you conduct it?
how did I conduct
The
that? So
survey,
we,
yeah.
so we have a vendor we use called Signet, and so what happened is through our business insurance subscribers, we sent that out to them directly through email. We also use social media, so leveraging groups like Wing, the Women Insurance Networking Group, Gamma Iota Sigma, NAI, the National African American Insurance Association, outreach that way, and then people like you guys just spreading the word. That's how we got out, and we got results in which some are going to be released right now. Like I said, it's in the current Business Insurance magazine highlighting diversity recruitment, retainment, and development of those people within the insurance, health, and benefits space. We also have some research coming out later this year, more about how are people motivated in their jobs in insurance, how much they're getting paid, and that's by age, gender, and race demographics. So seeing the breakdown of salaries as well as what motivates people to come in the insurance industry. So that's really exciting. We also have a webinar coming up that's happening on September 18th, which we have Chief HR Officer of MFP, a broker. She's going to speak about unconscious bias. A lot of people hear the term unconscious bias, but don't know what that's about. And so learning ways to understand, uncover, and then train on that is coming up. Also, we have some things coming up in the future. So we'll be launching a form of a podcast to help highlight
Ooh.
diversity inclusion influencers in our space as well as in other corporations, and talking about what our institute members are doing and tips everyone can take to advance diversity and inclusion. So on the D&I Institute front, that's what's going on.
Well, of course, I'm going to go immediately to the podcast.
Yeah.
So, what are your plans for the podcast? What kind of format will it be in? What are you hoping? Who's the audience you're trying to reach?
The audience we're trying to reach is insurance industry professionals like you and I. Like we're all of us. We want to do the best job we can do. We want to thrive in our environment. But how do we make it more inclusive? How do we make a difference? And for the professionals as well as companies, hearing leaders in the space, diversity inclusion leaders, talk about what their journey is, what their companies are doing, things that tangible, actionable solutions we can take is the form, and that will be an interview form that we'll be doing this
Oh,
podcast. So
cool.
something brief, but to get to the point, give you guys tips to make a difference.
Yeah. Well, we'll make sure that we publicize that on Insurance Nerds and make sure we can help you get an audience for that. So that's pretty cool.
Thank
Are
you.
there any concerns that you have about doing a podcast?
I think anytime you try something new, whether it's a new job, a new opportunity, it's always nerve-wracking. But I've always been a leaper versus a fearful person, from leaping from a broker to now doing diversity inclusion to before doing marketing and public health. So I don't think it's really nerve-wracking. I'm more energized and excited to have this forum and do something that's going to impact more people. I think reading is one medium, as well as podcasts, to reach different demographics. So I think it'll be a great way to get the message across.
Yeah, when we started Profiles in Risk, I think we recorded it like 2 weeks before the actual broadcast date. And I just remember I wanted to keep kicking the can down the road. That night that we released it, I was so nervous.
Really?
Yeah, your neck is sticking out. Like,
Yeah.
everyone is going to, people are going to listen to it. They're going to judge you. And I can say, for anyone that's out there that's like thinking of doing a podcast, once you get the first few under your belt, it's not that big a deal. You
got to commit to like 6-10 at least, kind of get some reps under your belt.
Abel Travis, who does the Insurance Innovators podcast, when I talked to him, he was so forward thinking in it that I think he got like 2 months worth of podcast interviews like done before he even broadcasted the first one.
I don't believe he hadn't done it before. He came out so professional on his.
Well, I told him that. Yeah, he was a natural. But there is a concern when you do a podcast that it's like, can I keep the momentum going? What if I can't get guests? And I can tell you for sure, in the first few of Profiles in Risk, we were always teetering on, we have a podcast coming up and I have nothing recorded. Like, we have to urgently go find someone to record something. Deidre, you do get to a point where that doesn't become a problem, where you'll have a few in your back pocket. You'll have loads of guests that you can kind of tap into. And, quite frankly, guests that you can keep going back to. That's like Brett, I can just always lean on him and just say, hey, I need a few minutes, jump on a recording with me, and let's wrap something out. So that's really exciting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it'll be great. I think having 17 companies or members of our Diversity Inclusion Institute gets us a nice little database of people, and they can tap into the resources as well. It's just, there's so many influencers out there. So just highlighting and amplifying their voice would be great, because I see people from when I was working in the broker in the trenches who are doing the thing. It's like, how do we give them the voice to talk about what they're doing on the ground floor to make things more inclusive in the workplace? So that's good. On the other diversity inclusion front, there are things happening. I don't know if you're aware of Dive In International Insurance Festival. That is to promote diversity inclusion worldwide. It was launched by Lloyd's of London. And what happens is they're all around the world in September, between the 25th of September and 27th, in multiple cities. Their companies are collaborating to create diversity inclusion events. I'm actually co-chair of the San Francisco celebration, and so we're going to have a diversity inclusion fair on September 20th. And with that, we're having different insurance companies, ERGs, and professional organizations who are diverse coming together to collaborate, figure out how do we crowdsource solutions to diversity inclusion issues that we can take action on now. So I'm excited about that movement going on, as well as NAIA's conference, the National African American Insurance Association.
Oh, yes.
I'm the vice chair of their emerging leaders board. And so with that is how do we engage millennials more in the next generation to leadership roles and different things. And so they're having a conference that's actually the same time as the Dive In Festival, so around the 25th and 28th of September, and I'm actually moderating a panel about disruption in the insurance space. So with these new disruptions, whether they're shared economy, cybersecurity issues, legalized marijuana, what are the new careers that come out of there? What are the skill sets needed for people? So if you're like me and you guys were fairly young, hey, maybe you might want to take a different path around insurance and try one of these different emerging areas to see what we can do. So, and that's something else that's going on if you're interested in that.
I think it goes beyond just emerging areas. I think it's very important. Insurance is so vast that you get folks that, might be, let's say, an insurance agent, and, they don't really know, like, what's a reinsurer do? What's a reinsurance broker do? And so I think there's an importance even outside of the emerging areas, just areas within an insurance, that someone that's just starting their career may not be comfortable in the position that they're in at that time. And so, like, Profiles in Risk is really built to explore those other areas so that a young professional can say, wow, reinsurance seems really cool, or actuarial seems really cool. Or I've seen the flip side. I've seen someone in actuarial or reinsurance say, it looks like being an agent is like such a wonderful profession, and they've looked the other way. So that I think it goes all different ways. I think for diversity and inclusion, I think it's extremely important to make sure young professionals that we've spent so much time and effort getting them at least interested in the industry,
right,
to at least set them on a path where they can start to pick and choose what direction they want to go in, give them more options.
Right, that's for sure.
Kind of I think you end up a little bit regionally biased too. I don't know about you, Deidre, but coming from California, I just think of brokerages, just think of sales. And then you find out about the Northeast being kind of like the home base, and then you have your startup low clusters.
That's true.
I feel like you're kind of biased where you come from.
I definitely think for sure.
No, that's definitely true. There are definitely hotbeds that have a variety of stuff. New York City, of course, Chicago, of course. Minneapolis is an area that has insurance companies. Minneapolis is probably the reinsurance brokerage capital of the United States. Every reinsurance broker has a major office facility in Minneapolis. California doesn't have a lot of insurance companies. There's Farmers, there's Mercury, but it's like you said, Brett, it's generally an area where it's mostly brokerage related. So I think it is helpful, Deidre, a young professional that's probably based in California is not going to get a lot of exposure to reinsurance, is not going to get a lot of exposure to some of these other areas that where there's not a heavy presence in California.
Well, I would say, at least in the Bay Area, Central Bay Area, there's a large, exposure to that on the commercial insurance side. There's a lot of major companies. They have either offices out there and everything else. So I was fortunate also to work in 2 different states. I worked in Georgia, Atlanta, Georgia, as well as, I would say, the Bay Area. So having those 2 different perspectives, I think what Brett said, it is a different experience. I think the unique thing about California, like there are a lot of great companies there, the strong presence, but you're competing with the tech industry, at least in the Bay Area.
Yeah.
So poaching talent or retaining talent, it's hard because you're like, hey, my friends are at this company, they're getting great stock options, they're getting luxuries taken care of, but dry cleaning, food, whatever, and my friends are making X amount of money. I think it's hard for them to see the long-term effects of growing an insurance career and why that's a good thing, and that you can still have tech passion. So why don't you insure that kind of risk? Why don't you be the broker, and doing that kind of work?
Well, I think too, it'll catch up eventually, but playing around with the tech startup scene in insurance, it's a couple years behind. If you know the general tech scene, then you want to hop into insurance, you're a few phases ahead of what's going on in the day-to-day, which is a pretty cool opportunity. It won't be there forever, but for the next 5 years, I think you can kind of have a competitive edge in that way.
Well, there is InsurTech, right?
Right.
So there are, in Silicon Valley, there's, you can rattle off a whole bunch, but Hippo, Betterview, like those are all companies that are, have insurance business model, not insurance business models. They're in the insurance space, but have a tech business model associated with it. And so, I just think it's diversity and inclusion initiatives are incredibly important because of that particular point that you described. Even outside of tech, in the Northeast, insurance companies for talent are competing with financial institutions. They're competing with medical institutions. I am concerned not only that we can't fill in the gap, that the insurance industry itself, the ecosystem, is struggling to fill in the positions that they can fill. I'm worried that even in the positions that they fill, they're getting the people that are choosing insurance as the lesser of. They can't get into tech, they can't get into finance. Not that they're lesser of employees. It's just if there's a way to get high quality talent, regardless of where it comes from, the insurance ecosystem should strive to do that, and they should strive to make a welcoming environment for everybody. For that, you don't want to lose the best talent to all these other industries.
Right. I have a point. So with the diversity survey, we asked people about, what are the biggest challenges to creating diversity inclusion. And so the number one answer, and mind you, let's put in perspective, we have representation from who are women, men, actually a little bit who are transgendered, also from millennials, X Gen, whatever, other generations, and majority were white, but we actually had a larger Black population assigned about 20%, and then the rest of the minorities were smaller groups. So it wasn't enough to statistically kind of significant numbers to actually compare by those racial groups. But the number one overall response to the challenge of the industry is they can't find minorities with the talent. And I'll tell you, there are minorities out there with talent, whether they're young, people of color, women, just have to find the groups. And so people like, where can we find them? Well, why don't you try Prospanica? Why don't you try Ascend? Why don't you try the National Black MBA? There are other things, NABA, National African American Black Accounting Association. There's different things. You go Women Insurance Networking Group. You also have all these different places out there. So go outside your comfort zone and actually look and see there's organizations been around for many years who have top talent.
It's funny because they probably, from a recruiting standpoint, they're not going, like you said, they're not going out of their comfort zone. So they're just, they potentially want a more diverse employment roster, but they're recruiting in the exact same way.
Right.
And it's like, if you're going to expand, you have to go outside of the box to try to find that talent.
Got to break inertia. People just do what they've always done.
Yes,
it's always
of course.
They're behind. They have 14 things on their schedule. I think the top rung of insurance talent knows the opportunities there and they go get it, but it's that middle clump that could maybe tune up. There are a lot of clever people in some really cool positions that saw insurance early. Somebody recruited them out of an accounting class or something. But yeah, it's that middle chunk you feel like could be more competitive potentially.
Yeah, I agree. That's awesome, Deidre. That's a great update from you.
The report was interesting. I felt like it was enough news to be positive about, but still felt like there were miles to go. You know, it seemed like a good start, is kind of my takeaway from reading the diversity report. And my only 2 cents, my mom's Mexican, and I grew up in like LA County, which was culturally diverse, and then North Orange County, which was very Caucasian. And, I seem kind of like a white guy. So it was always a weird experience of being ethnic, but also appearing this way and seeing kind of the different interactions. And I think there's a drive from people with a more diverse background that's usually very impressive. And I grew up around a peer group where some people definitely were driven, but other people felt like that arrived just by being born in an area or county or situation, and that same stoke wasn't there. So I think there's great things you can pull from all communities, but I think if you tap into a diverse area, there's a hunger there, a drive to build something that's pretty unique and awesome.
Yeah, completely. So, I came from immigrant parents. I was the first one in my family born here. My family was, we were friends with a whole bunch of Greek immigrants. And I can tell you, like, European immigrants were like the hardest workers. It was like all of them, all they wanted to do was like start businesses. It may have been pizza shops, but so what? They were hard workers, and you can get something. Listen, if anyone's willing to work hard, there are very few areas of our economy, never mind insurance, where if you're not just willing to put in the effort, if you're willing to put in the effort, there's going to be a reward. You can find a home, you can build a career, you can find a mission. You have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to put in that effort. And I think from a diversity standpoint, if you do things in the same way the whole time, you're just going to keep getting the same results. So, and that goes for everything. You can have, you can want to expand your roster, but if you're recruiting in the same way, you're going to get the same result.
Right. And to your point, you guys just highlight two different experiences, which is why it's so important to have inclusive backgrounds. Now, I lead from an authentic leadership kind of perspective. I know I didn't always have this confidence earlier in my career, but it's like I'm bringing my whole self. This is I am California. I am a millennial. I'm Black. I'm Black girl magic is who I am. Now, with that, I'm able to relate to different people that way because I bring my whole self. So if you're like, hey, like this is my background, I am proud of this. I also open your back up. People are going to gravitate towards that. And think about clients. Clients are going to feel like they can trust you with really technical issues or merging risks, or like, man, I'm up all night thinking about this one issue. But if you're able to be open with them about your own, who you are, like obviously don't tell them all your secrets, but tell them, hey, I did this weekend. I had fun with my partner. We did whatever. It's like, okay, cool. Like I can be my whole self too around you. And I can trust you with business because I can trust you as a person. And going to that also, different people have different lens on things and perspective. Also with the research of our study, we saw that, minorities and women, they saw, issues differently. For example, And looking at sufficient diversity in our industry, majority of people in general believe that companies are doing a good job when it comes to diversity inclusion programs. On the flip side, as our industry is not sufficient diversity inclusion. And so all respondents said, you know, 30% said it was, 36% said it was, yes, it was, you know, sufficient. But when you look at it on a female perspective, only 31% of females, only 17% of Blacks said that. So it shows they all see a problem, but they see the problem differently. So having unique solutions to different people's perspectives is helpful. So companies, you know, think about what are you guys doing to attract, you know, female leaders, you know, also reach out to female clients. What is your kind of networking kind of opportunities? Is it always on a golf course? Are you going to other things? Or is it always alcohol related? Some religions don't allow people to drink alcohol. Like, what are you doing to kind of include people into the whole business transaction and networking portion of what you're doing? So I think to your point, it's like, hey, we have different backgrounds. How do you make it so it's inclusive of all people and their desires and what they want to do to be successful in this industry?
I think it's to Nick's point about just being willing to work hard and build something too, just empowering people who want to start a business and, you know, just make something happen for themselves and better themselves. You know, maybe that first generation entrepreneur, you know, it might be a way to kind of build a diversity wedge in.
Yeah. What's the point of having a diversity program if you get people in and you lock them up behind a desk?
Yeah.
You know, like if you're going to get them in and they have talent and they're willing to work hard, find paths for them to you know, expand who they are as not only as employees but as human beings within your organization. Getting to your point, Deidre, allow them to be themselves. Give them the space to be themselves in a way that kind of, I don't know, infects everybody else in the organization, so everyone can kind of feel comfortable with who they are. And I don't know.
Yeah, I didn't realize not being able to speak your mind was kind of a part of not having diversity, because there's definitely times I've held opinions, or you don't need to go out there be super political or religious all the time, but there's definitely times where I kind of like step back from my perspective and just kind of nodded a little bit when I was thinking about things differently. I didn't realize that was a form of slight discrimination, you know, kind of having a group think that you're either part of it or you're not.
Well, it's more the fact that is it a comfortable environment in which you can speak your opinion? Because a lot of times we think about the risk management perspective and things happening from, you know, the Starbucks situation with, you know, calling the police on some, you know, people who were just waiting for a business meeting, to, you know, H&M and stuff, and when they're having a black kid with a monkey shirt and what King of the Jungle, and it's like, okay, there has to be multiple people making a decision when it comes to training employees, multiple decision with marketing stuff. But are people able to speak their voice? And if they do speak their voice, are they listened to? Because someone probably thought, man, that's probably not the right shirt to be having out there. But if you're not able to talk, then what happens? It costs the companies money because it's an issue when it could have been just addressed real time by that person who's at the company. And they're like, you know, Kanye shrug, I said my part, but no one listened. So it's like you got to think about that kind of perspective on things. And then when I think about you guys, think about thought leadership, because look at you guys have jobs or doing things, and there's a lot of us who have more than one passion. We have a job and we love our job and fulfill, but there's other things we want to do. So having forums like this is important, because back in the days, like you work hard at a company, you retire there, you get your golden watch. Now it's like, I want to do my job. I also want to do podcasting, or I do have another passion, something I'm doing that's still related. So how do companies let you have the space for that, but also use that? Hey, I see you like public speaking. I'm gonna have you talk about this to some clients or to a forum. Like poaching that ingrown talent is a really important thing that companies do.
So take the podcast that you're developing. That's probably not something you trained for at school, right? But there's probably something innate within you that's going to bubble to the surface as you do this particular podcast. What a valuable skill to learn. You do that for a year, you will have interviewing skills. You will have scheduling ability. You'll have doing a podcast and organizing it, and organizing it over a long period of time, along with editing the audio files and get them staying on a schedule. Doing that is an immensely valuable skill set that you will be able to take with you wherever you go. I'm sure you're going to spend the rest of your career at business insurance. I'm just saying, it's just a valuable skill set. I can look back on my career and some of the very unique moments where I was able to, or the company gave me the opportunity to do something a little bit outside of my day-to-day. And it's not like I'm still using the skills I learned from that, project or whatever. It's just that it gave me a ton of confidence.
Right.
It's I did something completely outside of what I do. I did it well. Now it gave me the confidence that I can do that again. Like if there's something that's interesting to me, I can step outside of my comfort zone, and I know I can do it because I know what sort of effort I need to put into it. But it's just a incredibly valuable skill set for you to do that podcast. That's to me, that's like the classic example of what you just described. Is they're going to allow you to do something that's outside. If you're in an agency, if you're in a carrier, and you have employees that have this ability to do this other stuff, let them do that other stuff. Like figure out ways that you can increase the value of the company by allowing your employees to just express their skill set,
Well, you're going to nurture it too. Yeah.
I'd say it's a natural transition because, business insurance has a media platform. So this making that, amplifying that, hey, we already have, with the print paper, we have conferences, we have, awards. So let's just add a podcast to it. So it's a natural fit anyways. And so it's just, how do you have companies recognize talent, leverage it, amplify it for their own business needs? Everyone wins. Yep. Sorry, Brett, what was your point?
No, you're good. I heard that people aren't naturally charismatic, but they get put in position of authority, and then it sort of nurtures it out of them. You have to be kind of enabled to become a leader. And I always thought kind of B leaders want to pin everybody down, find people who are lesser, want people to agree. But really true, like A leaders want to find the best people they can, want to promote, want to elevate. And like, I know it can create its own type of challenge, but having a bunch of leaders, a bunch of thinkers in your organization, it's going to be key to survive going forward. There aren't these big machines that have been marching for 50 years. Those are struggling a little bit. I think you're going to have to evolve on the fly to be successful going forward. And you always need a few different perspectives for that.
Yeah.
Right. So I know with my performance evaluations, when I was on the broker front, I always had things that directly relate to my job as well as like personal goals. So I want to publicly speak at this thing, or whatever, and it's not selfish if it's going to help the company. So if I'm on, on behalf of I was Marsh, I'm going to speak on this panel at Woman to Watch. It's going to represent the company. It's good for branding. It's good for thought leadership, whatever. So it's like, I think also to employees and professionals, think about what your unique skill set is, what value you can bring, and also what's going to fulfill you personally, because there are days at your job, any job, dream job, where you're like, man, this is, it's a bad day, or this is getting me down. But if you have things to balance it out, which is match with your passion, you're going to be a lot more engaged, talking about employee engagement and happiness, because you're like, man, at least I'm able to execute my dreams at this company. So even though the day is bad, overall, I love my job and what I'm doing, and it's fulfilling my inner purpose as a person.
Yep. I love that. Before we end this particular episode, I wanted to swing over to Brett and get an update from him. What's going on with you?
So my funniest kind of most recent update is I had a meetup group kind of land in my lap that was just struggling for insurance like a year and a half ago, turned into a Broker Brews meetup. I put it out on LinkedIn, and then with InsurTech Connect happening in the backyard up in Vegas, I threw it out there just to, do a little Vegas session. So I think that'll be awesome. I'm looking forward to a chance to meet, maybe 6, maybe 10 people who I've only communicated with online in person. So I think that'll be a lot of fun.
I'll be there.
Heck yeah. I'll get you on the list.
I'll meet you then. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. That's awesome.
When is the event?
So it's the 2nd and 3rd. So I just was going to do something on the night of the 1st, just shoot out there and, see who we can catch up with. It's fun. October. So it is kind of lining up with Insurance Nerds Day. I think
it's tough for me. So Deidre should go to Broker Brews. I did see that. I saw you got a good response.
Yeah, it was fun. Yeah, it was a pleasant surprise seeing that traction. And speaking of your comfort zone, there was a lot of people I tagged in there that felt a little bit nervous to throw it on there, and then everyone's having a good time, So you just you got to stretch and recognize the right people, recognize the positivity or the initiative, and they'll cheer you on.
Yep. So. Awesome. Deidre, thank you for coming on. Thank you for chatting with us.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it was great to catch up with you. It probably I think what we should do is we should when you guys do InsurTech Connect, Brett, pull out your phone. Let's
There you go.
let's get another attachment point, just like a quickie 5-10 minute conversation, and catch up, see how the podcast is going.
Is that before or after the bruise?
Yeah, exactly.
After.
Yeah.
It's got to be after.
That sounds awesome. Thank you for the platform. And I mean, diversityinclusioninstitute.com. Go check it out and see what we're up to. Companies, please join the movement. Professionals, if you're at a company who is a member, I mean, I would say maximize that and use this information. And overall, the industry, let's keep on this movement of being inclusive and providing platforms for people to have their dream careers in this great space of insurance.
Awesome. So enjoy the weather in California. My news is I will be out there next week. So
cool.
Deidre, unfortunately, I won't have enough time in the Bay Area. I'm only there for half a day.
Oh, wow.
But Brett, I will be in Orange County for a day. So let's see if we can connect and
heck yeah, man. We'll
get
figure it out.
Get another episode up. So for our guest, Deidre Wright, Brett Fuller, my co-host, I'm Nick Lamparelli. Until next time.
See you guys.
Peace.